So good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, August 12, 2021. This is a special meeting agenda, once again, to consider human resources, personnel changes. Attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. First business item, and again, it's a potential action item, position changes and distribution of salary savings. Prosecutor. Who will lead us here?
Barry McHugh here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is essentially, and there's one matter on this item that will need executive session, but the basis of the request is that I had an AT5 position leave. I'm promoting people from within the organization, resulting in some, salary savings that I would like to utilize and distribute to a couple of attorneys who will be taking on some additional responsibilities as felony attorneys. And so it's a budget neutral request, I think, as reflected in the clerk's summary that hopefully made it to the board, but made it to me. And so that's the basic request. But I do have some information I think would be more appropriate for executive session.
Sure. So, Barry, I have one question. The two attorneys taking on more work, is that directly related to the AT5 leaving?
Yes.
Okay. So what I suggest, Barry, is let's try to get through the agenda and then maybe come back and go into exec at the end. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So let's just put this in abeyance and we'll come back and revisit it at the end of our agenda. Okay. Second item, I guess this is also the prosecutor, exception to policy 120 for retention bonus funding.
Thank you, Commissioners. Barry McHugh again. This request is based on a hire that I would like to make at market for a legal assistant at grade 6. And the basis for that is the person we're looking at has 6 years of experience doing exactly what we do at Ada County. And beyond that, she's been doing legal assistant work for Ada County with some of the more complex child abuse, domestic violence, the kinds of cases that, and we've certainly done our reference checks to indicate that we believe that she'll be able to come in and immediately take on cases of that complexity and caliber. And so for that reason, because of her experience, we believe she's not only qualified for market, but she's also taking a bit of a drop in salary to come here. She and her husband planned to come here, so that was part of their plan, but it's still a drop in pay for her. And then the second part of it is there's some salary savings from the April 22 board action where we converted a position to one part-time position and some temporary legal assistant, 5 weeks, I think it was. And out of that, we converted a full-time position. And so for this year, there's a bit of money that was not going to be spent that was budgeted for that full-time position. And given the kind of the nature of the way things are going, and now we're back into it with trials being canceled this week, next week, and I don't know for how long. It's just going to create, not only for the last about 12 weeks of going through trials and working through things, but now we've got, we're back in the situation of having to wait till the infection rate drops down, which creates a lot of, stress. We have to resubpoena. The attorneys get, jammed up once we start opening up again. And so what I'm asking for the board is to authorize a retention bonus pool of $20,000 out of what I believe to be around $30,000 of salary savings that resulted from that original action back in April.
Okay. Thoughts?
So I think this ties into a bigger discussion about retention bonuses in general and how we're going to handle that. Because if we do all these one-off retention bonuses, then we need to decide what the parameters are. If it's places where we're losing people, if it's other key areas where maybe we're not losing people, but if we started to lose people, especially the lower paying jobs, we are not going to be able to rehire. So I want this to be part of a bigger discussion. And I'm not necessarily against it because they are, kind of above and beyond right now. Typically, they've gone from 1 trial a week to 4 trials a week, and now it's canceled again. And so now a bunch of problems arise with witnesses and schedules and stuff. So I just want a bigger discussion on how do we want to handle retention bonuses before we approve this one.
Bill, any thoughts?
Well, I agree. We're trying to stay away from making exceptions, and we're trying to put everything in a policy that we can. And before we decide it can't be put in a policy, I think we need to discuss it thoroughly.
Yeah, and actually I've been thinking along the same lines because it seems like the floodgates have opened. And until and unless we have a retention bonus policy, I'm not going to approve anymore. And it'll be coming up. I think it's going to be on the elected officials meeting for next Wednesday.
Yes.
I expect we will have a policy in short order. But as far as the rest of these today, I'm going to give you a straight answer. I will not entertain them today. It's just that simple. That's for me. I don't know how my coworkers feel, but co-commissioners, excuse
I
me.
agree.
And that's fine because I am committed to retention bonuses. We just have to figure out how that looks countywide. So then my other question would be the exception to policy 120. Because we are going to be looking at getting people, we've got money in the budget, getting people to the market who belong there. Is this going to cause a problem with compression if Barry hires this person at market, even though they may qualify because the experience is transferable?
Without looking at all the staffing within that grouping, I can't answer that. I'd have to go back and look at it. But policy, we'll have to change policy, but policy does allow to hire at 95 or as Barry's coming forward, higher than 95% of market based on experience. So you would assume that an employee or an individual with 6 years of experience would typically get to market at that 6th year of experience. So I'm not sure if it would. I don't know if that's something Barry can answer, but we could look at it in the mix of things as we're moving forward with the compression analysis.
Barry, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that the current status of, at least on the legal assistant level, is that I have, a smaller group of legal assistants who have been with the county for many years and certainly would not be creating any compression there. And then legal assistants who have worked in the office for, 6 years or less, with a couple of exceptions, and those 2 exceptions I think are making above market. And so I don't believe, sitting here today, that it would create any compression issues.
Okay. But typically the compression issues are going to be handled this year anyway. Is that correct?
Our plan is to handle some of the compression. We would
Right,
need a
right.
lot of money for that.
Right.
But we are trying to, we'll create some criteria on how we're going to address it, and it might be something that we address with staff that have tenure of, beyond 6 years,
Right.
to try and put some separation based on time and position. So we would start to address it, but it won't solve it at this point.
Right. Barry, how easy is it to hire legal assistants?
Well, it's almost impossible to hire somebody with this kind of experience. This is the first time I've ever found somebody with the kind of experience that we're talking about. My practice has been always, we hire generally, newer people and then train them and hopefully, retain them over time as they, develop the knowledge and expertise to move into the legal assistant position. I think, well, I can remember one other situation where I hired somebody into a legal assistance position, didn't have this kind of experience, had private practice experience, which is great, but this is a pretty unusual opportunity, I guess.
All right, and then are you expecting the retirement of a legal assistant here shortly this year? Calendar year?
Next year.
Oh, next year.
Next fiscal year. Sometime in the first 6 months I'm expecting a retirement.
Okay, so where are we headed here?
So
Are we still on this? I mean, I'm confused at this point. Are we
we're
still on the
policy-
second item?
Yeah, we are.
120?
Policy 120.
Right.
He wants to hire the legal assistant at market.
Okay, and the impact?
Trans.
What's the impact?
The impact financially is not going to be an issue. It's just a matter of the exception to policy 120, which I think at this point,
Yeah, when we're in a
This is
We have made exception to
okay,
policy.
yeah, when we're in a hiring mode and a position needs to be filled and we're faced with a labor shortage, I don't have a problem. I'm fine.
okay.
Leslie, okay?
and just to be clear, this is a new position the board approved, and so my understanding is that it gets budgeted at market and it will be effective October 1 in terms of the hire.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then motion?
I move that we approve exception to policy 120 for the legal assistant starting October 1st for the prosecuting attorney.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Fillios.
Aye, and the motion is carried. So Barry, we're not going to need an exec on this particular item.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3, request for overlap of staff attorney and retro overlap of staff attorney, specialty court.
You'll need to come to a microphone.
Oh yeah, you're
So-
not close enough to a
Yeah.
table mic.
Good morning, Karlene Behringer, on behalf of District Court. Commissioners, I'm here today to request overlap funds for 2 different staff attorneys, Judge Mitchell's staff attorney and Judge Meyer's staff attorney. One, Judge Meyer's staff attorney has already left. She spent a week training the new staff attorney, and Judge Mitchell's staff attorney is leaving in a couple weeks, and they'd like to have funds to have the new attorney also shadow him for a week and learn all the policies and procedures for Judge Mitchell.
So these are both 5-day overlaps.
Correct.
And do you have salary, room in the salary to cover it?
I do.
Okay,
Fine.
I'm good. Motion.
I move that we approve the request for overlap of staff attorneys and then making the one retro to cover the time where it was overlapped for specialty court.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Fillios.
Aye, and the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karlene. Request for repro MC manager grade change. Dave, you going to talk to this? You get the podium.
All yours.
I was going to be here today. Basically, I was requesting a pay grade change from 8 to 10 based on the bulk of managers are in a grade 10, and I'm in an 8, and I feel it's the same responsibilities that these other managers have. And
How long have you been with the county?
I started in county July of 1994, and I've had the current position since 2004.
And how large is your vast department?
3 people total. By looking at also some of the other job descriptions, they're very comparable as far as what the requirements are. So I'm just looking to make it more equitable where my position with these other managers' positions are.
Sure. So Sylvia, is that something that we can take a look at, or maybe you've already looked at it?
I did go back and look at what we had available with the wage study from 2019, and David's position did not have market data at that time. So the process that we use consistently throughout the county is if we didn't have market data, we did internal alignment. So under the formal system, the position was a grade J, and looking back at schedules, we have them scattered throughout the pay plan and so
Okay.
forth. So, something we can look at really based on what the board is for fiscal year 23, really identifying his position as one that we need to get market data for, because it's different. It's not the traditional kind of position you would get market data for. Do that, analyze it, and then make that shift then. But at this point, we just need direction from the board of what you'd like us to do.
Well, how much time do you need?
Well, do you want us to try and get some market data on his position now?
I would.
It
Sure.
shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, I'll reach out. We can reach out to Ameriben. I would say give us a couple weeks, because I need to give them
Okay.
some time to find the matches if they can, and we would use the same market that we did under the wage study.
Okay. How many pieces of paper do you handle in a month?
That varies.
Well, generally, what is the description of what Reprographics does?
We, I guess,
He's actually got it here.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted just for the record for people to hear. I was impressed.
I guess at the top of my head, I don't have the figures. To be honest with you.
I'll just read it briefly for everybody's benefit. You currently, on a yearly average, produce 2 million images on our black printer, 300,000 images on the color printer, print 400,000 envelopes with return addresses, meter 420,000 pieces of mail on our mail machine for a cost of $260,000 yearly, and you sort and deliver 230,000 pieces of departmental mail yearly. The other thing, and this is a feather in your cap, Dave, when you took over the manager's position, your budget for high production printers was $70,000 a year, and that's been reduced in half to $35,000. So I think
You've done a great job.
give credit where credit's due.
Give us a couple of weeks.
You okay with that?
Yep.
Sylvia? Okay. So you
So-
have direction?
We have a couple other positions too that we did not have market data for, and those were going to be handled in October, at the beginning of the study. Because we have, I don't know, is it 2 or 3 now?
There was one request that has come forward that was denied to do anything preliminarily outside of the wage study, and that was for RMO.
Okay.
So I'd be in favor of handling this at the same time.
So how many do we have now? 2?
It would be then 2, but we would we're intending to start the full market study in October of fiscal year 22, start gathering the data for presentation, and then, if we found something that was totally out of sync, we determine what that looks like. Is it something that the board would be willing to consider looking at from a mid-year perspective if we find that they're way out of market and should be upgraded?
Yes, like we did the first time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have a situation here, and I think there are 2 of them,
Right.
where I think I'm hearing that can be done within a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Not.
Well,
I guess what I'm saying is I'm not seeing the situation with Dave as part of the broader wage study that's going to take longer.
No, the situation with Dave is the same situation as the other one mentioned, where market data wasn't available in 2019.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is an internal alignment issue with both of them. So
You're
this
looking at-
is going forward when we pick what I'd be more comfortable with is when we pick the new market, starting the study in October, that's going to give us different data, and we may end up getting some more, not alignment, but more backup for these 2 positions.
right. You could get benchmark data, because what we would do is on the 2 positions we've talked about, we would specifically ask Ameriben and any other ones we've identified to go out and search the market, our market that we identify, organizations, and see if you can find us matches.
I would
So
like
it'd be
that.
more directed.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't be doing it right now,
Right,
correct?
starting in October.
October?
No, I don't like that. I think this has been lagging for years.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's back up again. How much time do you need?
Well, if
I mean,
you
I don't
want,
want to keep people waiting 6 and 8 months for a
Right.
wage study.
okay.
Okay, in a
So-
case like Dave's, if it's going to take a couple of weeks, I don't have
Mhm.
a problem with it. If it's 2 cases, that's fine. They're isolated, but there are 2 different situations here. There's an immediate situation, and there's a longer term with the wage study. I'm more concerned with the longer term. I know you're going to do that.
It's countywide.
That's countywide. But
Right.
in this case, what do we need? A couple of weeks?
Yes,
That's what I.
yes.
But you, Leslie, you want to wait till the start of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Because getting the new market, we may be able to get better data to solve these 2 problems. It doesn't mean that they have to wait until, the wage study is finished. It means as soon as they get the data on these based on the new market,
I'm good.
then we can address them.
And how long would that be realistically?
The full countywide wage study, probably about 4 months.
Yeah,
Because
but-
what we'll have to do is first identify our markets, and we're going to try and be proactive, have it identified before October, so that then I can have a meeting with our consultant and say, here's our market, and here's some specific positions we want, and then there's traditional positions we'll want market data on, and from there they'll search the web, their databases, give us then a custom report, and then from there we can analyze how the positions look and if they need to be moved, if they're out of sync, out of market, or if they fall right where they should be. Then we can present that to the board, and from there start taking some action of what that might look like.
I see us having to do this remedial study, if you will, honestly, and not pointing fingers at HR, more at the board and boards past. These kind of examples shouldn't happen. Had Dave not brought this to my attention, we wouldn't be talking about it today. So thank you. Thank you. You'll have to wait a little bit. Okay.
I'm going to ask the same question. How long does he have to wait?
Well,
I'm not going to wait 4 and 6 months.
So it
That's
would,
okay for the wage study, the general study. Go ahead.
right. So if you want one targeted, we need at least 2 weeks.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, and then we would come back to the board, we'd analyze the data for this one position. So about 2 weeks, and if it looks like it would be longer, I would notify the board.
And I'm fine with that. Leslie, you want to wait till October?
Yes.
So you want it as part of the broader general wage study?
Yes. However, what happens is once this position with the new market, once the position is identified, then we can make a change sooner than the entire wage study. And we're addressing retention bonuses. So I think that would be an appropriate first step while the deeper dive is looked at. Because if it's looked at now and then we have to come back and change something based on the new market, then it's just a lot more additional work.
You okay with that?
No. I think we should go ahead and get it done.
Well, we might be saying the same thing here. Let me try to clarify. I think what Leslie's saying, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we embark on this at the same time, which is basically the start of the fiscal year with the general wage study. But as you get data, if you have the data to make a recommendation within a couple, 3 weeks thereafter, we can proceed on that. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yes, we'll just have to timeline it with the Maribin to get us the date.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
I'm not.
You're not?
It's okay.
Okay. You have direction.
Okay, October, when we start the
Yes.
market data, and I will include the position for that they really go and find us some market data for the position.
It's been brought to our attention.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dave. Item number 5, standby policy. Captain Deak, how are you?
Good, Commissioners. Good morning. And there is actually an agenda change on that line item. I didn't get the agenda until after you asked the question. It is standby policy as well as a vacation policy amendment for temporary assignment. We discussed this at last week's board meeting.
Yes.
So that would be the only addition. So there's 2 points that I'd like to bring up today for
Okay.
policy change.
So, remind me, I thought we left the vacation that in December, if anybody had over 240
Yes.
hours, we were going to come back and pay for those hours.
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. I just want
Yeah.
to clarify that
Mhm.
on the
Yeah.
record because it wasn't, we pushed everything to today.
Sure.
It is a policy change.
Sure.
Okay.
The other is the standby policy. We currently have detention deputies that are called in to work overtime. This is actually a budget neutral. It would come out of our overtime allotment, the A budget. We are asking to put one person on standby rather than call them in for full overtime pay. The overtime rate is 1.5, as you know, and the standby pay is 0.5. So that person would stay at home, and if we don't need them for emergent situation, they would remain on standby. If they get called in, the worst case scenario, we're still at that budgeted 1.5 rate, but it is an amendment to what we do per policy. It hasn't existed, so.
So I think a potentially better way to handle this situation, because we're not expecting, or we're definitely hoping this is not an ongoing situation, that will, instead of writing a policy, which is not going to fit countywide, we're just not going to be able to do that, is a resolution saying that, and we can get one passed Tuesday, which you've already gotten permission to operate under the resolution.
Good.
So one that kind of indicates all of the circumstances that are happening that causes this, and it'll just be memorialized in the resolution.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, I think that's the best
Sounds
way
good.
to do that.
You're okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was easy.
Thank you.
You need to come to a microphone, Dan.
I just want to clarify what will the nature of the resolution be?
Whereas there are significant vacant positions and positions due to illness and FMLA and injury that is causing this shortage, and therefore we authorize standby time to occur until significant staffing is able to come back and cover.
Okay. And to the extent that our budget is protected under these
Mhm.
circumstances,
Mhm.
that would cover that. I mean, in
Yes,
essence,
because
we
once
overrun-
again, to Captain's point, it's budget neutral. So this is actually going to save some money.
I would hope, but again, going back to the meeting from last week, if indeed there's an issue, then we were willing to code or make a code specific to anything that would be charged towards standby time. I just want to make sure that our budget would be held whole if if there's something unanticipated. I just, to say that it's budget neutral, it probably will be, but in the times that we're in right now, with what I see on the horizon,
Yeah, you
I
could
just
have
wanna make sure-
unforeseen circumstances that
Yes,
arise.
sir.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying. I just want to make sure that's understood.
Yes.
Fair,
Yep.
fair
Yes.
enough. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Okay.
So, Darrin, would you be able to craft a resolution for us? Thank you.
Thanks, Darrin. Okay, assessor retention bonuses.
So,
I mean, I can make it easy for you. We're going to be taking this up next week.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
That's what
and
you're
and
gonna tell me.
yeah, the idea, Allison, is we need to come up with a policy because we're getting hit with these at almost every HR meeting. And without a policy, it becomes one-off, and then we get inconsistent, and then we have other issues. But I mean, you're welcome to speak if you'd like. I mean, it's up to you.
I think my email that I had sent, it explains it, but I understand what you are saying, that we do need a policy. So we will wait and go from there.
They're coming. We just have to figure out how to disperse them. Last year, it just was a blanket. All employees got $500. And this year,
Right.
I think we need to, in my opinion, is identify some key areas and then go kind of start there, start that priority key areas. And obviously, your team has already been identified as one of them. and then go to the next tier where it's like, okay, maybe we don't have a lot of turnover in this area. However, if we start to have turnover, we're not going to be able to replace these people. And then go out to the final tier of maybe they're not turnover and maybe they're not that difficult to replace, but we want to reward them for sticking it out and to continue things that we're still going to be dealing with coming forward. So
Do you have an estimated time?
we're addressing it at the elected officials meeting next
Next week.
Wednesday, and with, unfortunately, our legal stepped out, but with his help, I think we're going to be able to craft something pretty quickly to present next week, and to just get some feedback from the elected officials and see if we can do that going forward.
You're probably looking at what, maybe a couple of weeks?
Okay.
Well, yeah, if we can
Implement
approve
it.
something next week, then we
Yes,
can go
yeah,
forward on the next. I would actually want to put it off till September. If potentially, yeah, because I think August 24th, I actually have a conflict during that HR meeting, and so if we did it the first, yes, the 26th, whatever that date was,
I will not be here.
on August 26th. Okay. Okay, so let me ask Auditor. So if September 9th, we were able to have a schedule and be able to approve the tiered effect, would that be enough time to do it in 2 pay periods before the end of the fiscal year, or probably not? Okay, and then can you also ask payroll, or you would know this, is it going to be a problem if the bonuses are approved now but then paid after October 1st? Unless we just say we're going to use fund balance. Because obviously the returning money is just gonna, I mean, it's just a pass through. Yeah. So.
Is there a possibility we reschedule HR meeting on the 26th earlier?
Yeah, I mean, actually,
I mean,
why don't we just,
If I know what's coming up, I can weigh in ahead of time. Don't put it off for me.
The 26th meeting?
that's a Tuesday, right?
It's a Thursday.
So, actually, I have it right here. I know that there was one that was on a Tuesday for some reason. I know the reason is because Chris and I are not supposed to be here on the 26th, and that's why.
Oh, so you're not here either?
No,
Oh,
no, we have, you're talking about the fair commitment.
oh, no.
Yeah. So can we do August 25th?
I'll be here. But
August 25th. Yes, but, right,
Okay,
but
so
I'm not here the 24th either during that time. I have a conflict. So can we move it to August 25th? And as long as the room's available and I can have Chandra.
which is the date of the, yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I guess you.
I'm fine,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, either that or we can put it at 1 o'clock on Tuesday the 24th. So we'll reschedule it. So we'll try to
We
keep
just
it
can't
in
do the
August.
26th,
So
okay.
because my goal would be to do it over 2 pay periods and not just one. Just, you know, if this bonus is 500, it's 250 for 2 pay periods. Darrin, is there any?
Board discretion.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You okay? How's the new job? Okay. I don't often ask that, but okay. Okay, so
Jennifer, did you have?
It'd be likely easier to do it just 1 pay period instead of trying to break it up over 2. I'm assuming for payroll. So just consider that. If you're doing 500, it'd probably be easier just to do it one time 500.
Okay. We were just kind of trying to prevent. I mean, it's a retention bonus, so we didn't want people to stick around for the bonus and then leave.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Can we
Alright.
move on to item 7?
Yeah.
Okay, request to convert temporary payroll technician to full-time regular auditor. Dena.
Thank you, Commissioners. So before you have a request to convert a temporary part-time individual that we brought in April to help us with payroll. She's been working out great. She has prior payroll experience, and we would like to keep her. We did request this in the budget, however, it did get cut, but we're coming back before you now because her tenure with us will expire at the end of the fiscal year, and we really require that she stay with us because we'll be going into open enrollment, raises, payroll changes, that sort of thing. So we would ask that you would add her as a full-time person.
Right. And then apparently the last time you added a full-time person was when we had 500 employees. And
Yes, and we now have close to 900.
and all these changes are touched individually. There's no blanket way for the system.
No, unfortunately, our system is quite old, and so it requires a lot of manual entry.
Okay, so where is the money coming from?
It would be a budget increase.
Okay. And you indicated that this was part of the budget and we rejected it.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, when you say a budget increase, you're basically tapping into the money that's been one part of the money that was set aside, whether it was for mid-year increases or compression or whatever.
Correct.
Does anyone have any thoughts?
Well, my concern is the more we pile on people, then it stresses them out. And the fact that we went from this number of employees for 500 employees with the same number of full-time people, and now we're almost at 900. I mean, that's almost double with the same amount of employees. So, why we weren't able to bring it back during budget, I don't know. And I know for this year, for 21, it's not going to be an issue because you have salary savings to cover it.
Yes.
Under the clerk's office. So I just think it is what it is. Otherwise, we're going to come back and have the auditor's department decimated because they can't keep the people because the workload is too much. So it's just a growing pain.
I have one. I'm confused. My understanding was that once you publish this budget, which I assume it's gone to the paper, right?
Yes.
We can't add anything back.
No, we can't.
Is this an add back?
This would be considered usage of the pool that we put in place to address compression, mid-year increases, that sort of thing. So after talking to the payroll department, they indicated it was critical that we kept this position. This position expires at the end of the fiscal year.
But I think not only the position, but the person. The person actually has payroll experience and has been able to just step in and fill the need. So was it 750,000? Does anybody remember about that mid-year change?
It was 400. Well, go ahead.
There was slated 400,000 for compression.
Mm-hmm.
And 300,000 for the detention,
Yep.
and I believe 250,000
Mid-year.
for these type of HR changes that are occurring in the meetings for mid-year
Right.
out of cycle requests.
Right.
I'm willing to consider this along with the mid-year, but not at this time. I'm willing to consider it when we get into the next fiscal year and we consider mid-year increases, but I'm not inclined to approve this at this time.
And I agree. Sounds like a really good person that we should work to keep, but not now.
Okay, so at the end of the fiscal year, then would we have to separate employment with this person?
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
If
Yes. I
if
mean,
we don't have funding, then we would have to let this
Yeah,
person go.
September 30th, this person would no longer be employed with us, and then October 1st, so that's kind of the issue.
Jen, come on up.
We do have the temporary pool, I think, of $80,000 under the board still. Was that approved this year?
Yes,
Every
we
year
still
there's
have
that temporary pool. So initially when we got this position part-time, it came from the BOCC temp pool.
Yeah.
And so if we don't approve this position starting October 1st, would it be amendable to say, like we did before for this position, even if
Is
it's
tapping
part-time?
into the temp pool?
Yes, until we decide we want to make a mid-year change, if the board's amenable to that.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying come October 1st, this is not budgeted.
Correct.
No, because right now
Right,
it
because
came
we
from
didn't
the temp
budget it,
pool.
clearly. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I mean, just last week we did the motor vehicle licensing increases in their pay, and that wasn't budgeted either. So that's coming out of next year's mid-year pool as well. And this happens to us every single year because we're trying to solve these problems outside of budget, which budget is mere prediction. Nobody predicted COVID, nobody predicted employment shortage, nobody predicted the shortage of housing market. So these are things that we just have to address outside of budget.
Well, when's the next HR meeting? What did we decide?
It'll be the 24th, August 24th, Tuesday.
Put this back on the agenda with specific reference to the temp pool.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners.
We could approve it today with temp pool too. It's not precluded in the.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just that I want to do a little more research on this.
Sure.
Okay. Moving on. Item number 8, on-call pay, BOCC.
So we have 2 requests. We have a policy that I've been happy with, but the requests are outside the policy. So we need to determine if we're going to change the policy, if we're going to make exceptions to one-offs, and how we're just going to move forward and handle it. So apparently the on-call pay for every department that needs it did not make it into the 22 budget. So we have to address at least one request that is budget neutral that was requested in the budget.
Okay. Bill?
I'm in favor of the on-call pay, and I'm specifically talking about the sheriff's department.
Which I believe was approved in the budget.
Sylvia? Thoughts?
In terms of policy, it's the board's discretion. The law, and maybe Darrin wants to talk about it, here is the parameters of the law. You can always be more generous, not more restrictive. Darrin, do you want to add anything?
No, you're right. It's board discretion.
Mm-hmm.
Try to treat people equal.
Right. So
go ahead.
AMP asked for on-call, not pay, but time off. And so I don't know, Keith, if you want to just reiterate what was asked for in your budget.
Thank you, Hutcheson, for the record. Good morning. I can smile. It was just brought forward in the budget, budget neutral, basic revenues covering when officers on call, standby, whatever you want to call it, pay that week. They would get 1 day off that they would have to use in 90 days, and that follows policy, and they would not increase, having anything more than 40 hours of compensatory time. So that does fall within the policy of it already. So I was just trying to bring it on so it's not financial. And actually, the officers actually walked us forward and says, can we just get the day off scheduled out? We would maintain it just like policy says, and we would add expenses like everybody else.
So Darrin, I need to ask you, are we dealing with potential disparate treatment here?
Can you come to a microphone, please? You can just sit there if you want. Yeah,
we are. So my recommendation, if the board wants to do something like this, make it a county-wide policy. Discretion to the department head or elected, but make it a department-wide policy. It is an additional benefit too. Mm-hmm. So it's solely within the board's discretion, but each department or director or elected official would manage it. And then put some caps on it because it could create some budgetary impact. So put some caps on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a use it or lose it in 90 days.
Correct. It's already in policy 211. It's just getting permission because it is a fiscal consideration because time is fiscal related. So it isn't 211. You would just have to come from the board saying that my department was allowed to monitor that and go forward with this.
Do you have 211? On-call policy?
It's not all kinds. It's compensatory. It's a compensatory. But it's not. Compensatory time has a different a legal definition.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of a little bit.
Are we getting outside the?
Yeah.
scope?
No, it's so essentially, Keith, we're talking apples and oranges here. So
Yes.
it's not actually comp time is what they're going to get. They're going to get on call time.
Because we didn't have that policy. That's
Correct.
why
Yeah. So
that's why I went this direction.
right. So our on-call policy would have to be changed to allow this type of thing. The problem is it would have to be opened up to everybody.
Absolutely.
So
That's
once
the key.
again, this is why I didn't want to approve the detectives being a one-off. I wanted a full thing that's going to address everybody. So that's kind of where we're at with this. I don't expect it to be solved today. But this is just a discussion that we have to continue to have until we can come to an agreement on how we want to handle it countywide. So if you think it's appropriate to say, okay, we're not going to budget for on-call pay, but in like Keith's, they would like to handle it, once every 7 weeks.
Most everybody's one about once every 6 weeks. So no, actually it's one every 9 weeks. So it's average about 5 times a year per officer.
Yeah, so that would be 5 days off a year instead of being monetarily compensated for being on call.
Well, and we can structure a policy
Mm-hmm.
that allows for different options. Can
Yes.
we not?
Yes.
As long as it's extended to the entire county.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
And
And going along with Darrin, is my thing is in the policy, I think the parameters can be set because they have to come before the board for the approval of this call out. I think, like I'm bringing forward the time span and how it's going to be laid out. I think that should be brought in front of the board for approval, like I'm doing right now. I think the parameters could be set.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be very little additional language to what our policy already says to add this option.
Yeah.
And Leslie, in the past, you haven't liked the term on call.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that. And I think you're right. There's a good reason to call it something else, standby or something else.
So this is standby is different for the jail that we're talking about. So this is on call. This is actually on call. Like, for instance, Keith has to assign somebody every week to be on call. So when one of the, even if it's not that same officer's parolee, I don't know.
Yes, the probationer.
Probationer, thank you. I knew it was a P word. The probationer gets stopped, then that on-call person goes out, not the actual probation officer that covers that person. So same thing with detectives. Okay, this week, Detective, Crawford or somebody's on call, and they got approved to pay that week $250 just to be on call or whatever. I don't know what the 10,000 equals out to.
So the FLSA has provided some guidelines as to when you're on call and not entitled to pay, and when you're working. It's so restrictive that technically you're working.
Right, which is exactly why I feel standby fits in the FSLA parameter, the way they want to use it for our resolution. But yes, I am against on-call pay because these people sign up for these jobs. In the case of detectives, they actually say, I want to be a detective. Yes, I know I'm going to be on call, and I'm going to get $3.50 an hour for every hour I work, and I'm going to get overtime when I'm called out. So so that's why I particularly do not like on-call pay. But if it's going to be continually approved for one department, then I want it approved for other departments as well, because I think you get in the disparate impact then. If this department gets it, this department doesn't. So.
And we're not requesting stipend pay or anything like that.
Right.
We're not asking for that. Like they're saying, detectives, they don't receive anything like that. They just receive their regular hourly wage.
Right. But I'm trying to, I just kind of took it broader and kind of away from the specifics. So
where are we going?
So Sylvia and I could put together, work with Keith and the other departments who want an on-call policy that would include a day off a month or something like that for however many on-call days that you're on a month.
They just rotate weekly. So it's not all of them on-call, just
So basically, we'll have a policy with multiple options.
Yeah.
Or two options. Yes? Because
Yes.
the situation with detention is different.
So.
yeah, we're not talking about standby time. That's going to be fixed by a resolution. We're talking about on-call, which is a policy that we have.
It's closer to what the detectives are doing right now.
Yep.
It's kind of closer to that. I'm not saying we're the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Just it's closer to that mindset. The
Okay.
detention's something totally different. Else.
So let's back up. The standby time it is not working time. It really is on call, Leslie. If it was working time, we couldn't pay them half.
Yeah.
Sure.
We would have to pay them their
Full
rate
pay.
of pay.
Correct.
And calculate overtime.
Right.
So it is just another version of this on-call.
Right. But to not confuse everybody, that's why I kind of wanted to refer to it as standby time. But yes, legally under federal guidelines, it is on-call pay.
It's on-call pay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are going to structure something?
So yeah, to make it easy for the board, we can structure something and then give you something on a piece of paper to look at, and yay or nay, or change it.
Okay.
All right.
So it will be. Can we try to have it in place by the good person? Not just trying to set parameters.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for
The
your
way
time.
we're
I
headed, we're
appreciate
going to be taking up the theory of relativity soon. I mean, oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Oh, we just did. No, we didn't. Okay, COVID-related leave, HR.
Yes. With the rise of COVID cases within our county structure as well as in our community, HR has had numerous requests on whether the board is revisiting a temporary COVID leave policy of any nature. So wanted to start that dialogue with the board related to that. I did reach out to our local partners, and then the Idaho HR group started asking that question as well. So the majority of organizations, the ones that have responded, about 15 have indicated they're not putting any kind of a special COVID leave policy. What they've indicated is they're telling employees to use their accrued leave balances.
Okay.
And that's what's in place now. Federal law does not require the board to put a policy in place, but that would be your prerogative if you wanted to. We could put one in like we had from January through March of this year that allowed for some paid COVID leave without individuals using their accrued balances. So wanted to open the dialogue and get some direction from you and how you'd like HR to proceed with this.
Well, I have thoughts. Okay, so we have the potential for, we've got distancing, we've got vaccines. Very briefly, my view is if you're leaving, you're on your time. Because some people choose not to be vaccinated. I get it, that's their choice. We do have distancing in place as well, or we can. At DMV, I think we have plexiglass set up. I think we've got a couple of them set up in our office. So I think at the present time, there are enough precautions that people can take such that if they have to take the time off, it's on them. That's my take.
Yes, and to me, it just needs to be treated like any other illness, because why is it that if he's diagnosed with COVID, I have the same symptoms, I get a negative test, but now I have to use my accrued sick leave and he gets COVID leave. So I think that causes disparate impact. And the only reason that we had any COVID leave policy, period, was because the feds came in and said, here's this money, use it for the policy. So I am in agreement with you. It's just going to be sick time. And we've always addressed one-offs where people are in dire straits for whatever reason. We've always,
Make exceptions if Bill?
I
done
think
that,
it's
so.
important that we've got vaccines now, we've got, about masking, we've got distancing. I think with personal choices comes personal responsibility. So.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. You've got distancing, masks, and vaccines, and there's always a measure that somebody can take. So I think you have consensus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. We will not put together a policy.
Darrin, you okay?
Yep.
Oh, I just thought while you're here, I put you on the spot. Okay. All right. Holiday pay, final item. Policy 312 HR. Yeah, go right ahead.
Sure, go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay. So HR has been working on a holiday policy for a little while. And so I think at this time, Darrin and I have put together in we've worked with the agencies you identified, the Department of Solid Waste, Juvenile Detention, and the Sheriff's Office. Because the Sheriff's Office have come forward with a holiday buyback or payout kind of in a banking thing.
Okay.
So I think we've come to a good middle of the road policy that works for everybody. So in the policy, and we've also involved Dena in this to make sure from the auditor's perspective this policy would work. So they've all agreed that what we're presenting to the board today works for the organizations, and we believe it'll work well countywide. So one of the distinguishing factors about this policy is defining holiday pay and holiday time. So in the past, we didn't allow the accumulation of holiday leave hours in a bank. And now we're proposing that if holiday time is granted by a department, an employee can accrue up to 80 hours of holiday time. That should be used within 120 days, and then if you leave the county, you are not paid out. You lose it. It's a use it or lose it scenario.
Okay.
So that was some of the components of it, and we also defined that holiday pay is 8 hours of holiday. It isn't based on a 10-hour work shift and you get a 10-hour holiday or a 12-hour holiday. It is 8 hours of holiday pay at your regular hourly rate of pay, and it doesn't factor into overtime.
Okay.
Your regular hours work do, but the holiday time doesn't.
Okay.
So that in a nutshell, and we cleaned up some language because it was a little confusing, but that's my overall overview of the policy, Darrin.
And Juneteenth.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, we added Juneteenth to an observed holiday as guided by the board.
Right. So, Steve, are you prepared to speak to this?
Treasurer? Yeah, he has you have a unique situation, I believe, Steve.
I won't speak about the actual policy because this is the first time I've heard of it, but as it relates to Juneteenth, is a July 19th holiday. Our tax collection deadline is June 19th. Our tax deadline is the following day, which is the 20th. My intention is to have the treasurer's office, open on the 19th.
And just give him a floating
Pay
day,
time and a half, or give them
still to be determined. I'm leaning towards floating holiday type of concept.
right. So, Darrin, is that going to cause an issue? Because we'll have building and grounds will have to be here as well. Anytime anybody's in the building, we have to have building and grounds.
Now, at that time of year too, we'd probably like to have security.
Yes, absolutely. So that'll be KCSO though they get paid anyway. So
So we would just want to put a bullet in here about your office.
Okay.
Well, actually, we don't. If you have to be open, you have to be open.
Well, I don't have to be open. I'm choosing to be open just because of the deadline.
because of the deadline. Yeah.
So would they, Darrin, in this scenario, would the employees accrue 8 hours? You could put it as holiday time in the bank of
Yes.
these 80 hours, and then they would take it at another date, on another date. That works between management and the employee.
Or they get the holiday pay.
So
It's
would-
those guidelines of you could accrue up to 180 hours. Is that it?
120 hours.
It's 80 hours
80,
accrued.
sorry.
You have to use it should use it within 120 days.
Yes.
So the employee could either take the pay, this 8-hour payment, or they could say, I don't want that pay today. I want the day off another day and get paid the 8 hours some other day.
Okay. Sounds reasonable. How does that happen? Is it a notice that the employee is giving to me or to payroll?
Yes. So the way we have it written, in lieu of an employee receiving holiday pay at the discretion of the elected official or department head, full-time and non-exempt employees who work on the holiday may receive 8 hours of paid time off, holiday time, which should be used within 120 days. So it'd be like a vacation day accrual, but it'll be a holiday accrual. Yes.
So that's just facilitated by the completion of the time card then, is what I'm getting at.
We do indicate on this, and Dena, I don't know if you recall, that there would be a form the employee would fill out, and then you'd sign off on it for payroll to know they're going to bank that hour versus, and you've approved it for them to bank those 8 hours.
Okay. So I heard another form to fill out for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Great job. Good old government.
Yeah.
You okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
Is there an option for other elected to have a holiday like this?
See,
I know district court is closed, but we still continue operations and scanning. And then district court is required to be open Friday after Thanksgiving. We typically have to sell through Wednesday before Thanksgiving and after Friday.
right. So I guess the bigger, we had thought we had everybody on board with June 19th, but it seems that some elected officials have taken some time to consider it and would like it more like a floating holiday instead of June 19th off. So I don't know.
So
People can choose to still take it off.
Yeah, people could still choose to take that day off, and it'd be up to the elected official, I imagine. So I don't know. Is that
well, the board could either make it a floating holiday or do what the treasurer is doing now, come announce the desires to the board, and then the board approves it.
Yeah, I mean, Steve's got a unique situation, okay, because he's got a deadline that he's working with. Jennifer, what are we, you're saying that there are people in district court that have to work? Go ahead.
They don't have to work. The courts are closed for like juries
Right.
and trials, but I mean, there's so much workload right now that we could get scanning in, and all the caseloads caught up too. But it's the idea. I know people have floated around the idea of the Friday after Thanksgiving. District court has to be open that Friday. So typically, what we do is between Thursday we're closed. We'll have people come in Wednesday or Friday, kind of a half shift skeleton crew. And so it's just the ability to say, hey, can we do a floating holiday for people that I think many are moving to that idea of taking that Friday off after Thanksgiving.
I don't have an issue with that. If the EO wants to manage that, I mean, it's difficult when you try to make a single policy that goes across the county because we have so many discrete functions where some people need to be here and others don't. And I understand. And I think the only way we can accommodate that is with a floating holiday. I don't know. Maybe I'm.
No, we have to do one or the other. We can't do both. So we either have to say it is a floating holiday or June 19th is off and the treasurer remains open because of his circumstances.
Yeah, and I think the decision we made the last time we took this up was that would be a day off, and I think the deciding factor was the courts.
However, now it turns out that it would actually be a benefit to make it a floating holiday because the amount of people who chose to work that day could actually get caught up, which they never have a chance to get caught up when court is in session.
So I don't think it should be floating.
You don't.
Too much ambiguity.
Administratively, it's tough. It's easier to just follow what the state's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Kootenai County years and years ago, at least contemplated doing it, but I don't think they followed through with it.
All right, so if we leave it the way it is, and there are certain extenuating circumstances with different departments, just let the department manager and/or the EO handle that?
Mm-hmm. Right, because at the end of the day, the board decides when the holidays are and when they're not.
So would that have to be blanket to all holidays, or can we just say, okay, June 19th, if your EO chooses you to work, then you can have this floating holiday to take off whenever and it's managed at the EO level?
Right, so long as it's approved by the board.
Okay, so
Which you have done.
right, we've done that for the treasurer, but we haven't done it for the clerk.
So the clerk would need to come in.
Okay.
Okay.
And so we're going to confine it to Juneteenth, June 19th?
Well,
I mean, I think that's probably the easiest way. If we do this with every holiday, it's going to be,
We're not doing.
yeah.
No.
I agree with Bill that, hey, you choose one or the other. It's either a holiday or it's not, and then there's exceptions to that. So we've had one.
Okay.
There's another one, then the board
Fine with that.
addresses it.
Okay, so does our policy need to be updated to reflect the exception to the treasurer's office?
You know, maybe we put a bullet in there because this is so unique. Yeah, I think we do. For the next board, for the next HR person, the next civil
Sure.
attorney.
Okay,
Yeah.
so insert a statement to the effect that if the elected official deems it necessary to operate on that day, that they can offer a floating holiday. Is that it?
That they will come to the board.
Oh, come to the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Good.
Huh?
So
we
I'll,
will-
I'll add that.
Okay, so we'll bring it back, or do you want them to approve it and then we
Well, we
put
can
it
just,
with the resolution?
we'll just bring it forward in a business
In a
meeting
business
with the
meeting?
resolution.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right.
We okay? Leslie? Bill?
Yep.
Okay. Are we done?
We've got Barry's.
Oh, we got
item
Barry's.
number 1.
Exactly.
Hope you're not
Okay.
getting long distance charges, Barry.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Did you see Chandra's email?
Yes, and I emailed her back. It's a status update meeting, so we can just
Do
put
it
the
then?
HR. Yeah, yeah. So I don't think she's.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure she's answered me back.
We ready? Okay,
so-
so at this point we're moving back to the first item on our agenda, which was the position changes and distribution of salary savings with the prosecutor. So we're considering going into executive session.
Yes, I think we're ready to do that. I move we enter into the executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061B.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Fillios.
Aye. Entering into executive session with our prosecutor Barry McHugh and Deputy Civil Prosecuting Attorney Darrin Murphey.
So Barry, we are going to have to call you back. So Nancy, do you have his number?
Okay.
Actually, Sylvia will call you. Yeah.
Sounds
Yep.
good.
We'll call you right back.
Okay, so the time is now 12:16. We're about to exit executive session. Motion, please.
I move that we exit executive session, and I'll have a second motion after we're out.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Fillios.
Aye, exiting executive session. Any other motion?
Yes, I move that we approve the position changes and exception to policy 120 as outlined in the prosecutor's documents.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Fillios.
Aye, and the motion is carried.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Barry. Public comment?
Thanks, Barry. I'm gonna hang up.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Hearing none. 12:17, meeting adjourned. Thank you.